As a live performer, I'm very often asked by other musicians about stage fright or stage nerves, or in a slightly milder form, it's like stage anxiety, stage panic, even very mild stage, what I call apprehension or apprehensiveness. Just that feeling of can be from just being a little bit apprehensive to a feeling of impending doom, that maybe something can go horribly wrong, or even not necessarily to do with playing, but maybe you'll trip over a lead or a cable, or make a fool of yourself, or a string will break, or your amp will suddenly pack up. All these kind of things. I have those anxiety dreams quite often. But fortunately, they've got less. But I always go back to a story, something that happened to me when I was 19. So that would have been 1975. And I played at a concert. It was a charity concert. And I played two tunes with the Tony Lee Trio. Tony Lee was a very, very well-known jazz piano player in the UK. And at that time, on the bill as well, there were a lot of the top jazz musicians in the UK at that time. So it was, I was looking forward to it so much. I thought, this is fantastic. It was, I was very excited about it. When I actually walked out on stage and I saw all these people sitting out there in this theatre all looking at me, something kind of came over me, and I got this anxiety. I'd always suffered a bit from anxiety anyway, just in everyday life, ever since I was a kid. I was quite nervous when I was a kid, and I often had these little slightly anxious moments. So I got this kind of anxious thing, oh my goodness. Anyway, I played, and I knew what I was playing. I'd worked with Tony before, and I just didn't play very well. And when I walked off stage, I remember saying to myself, I am never, ever going to get nervous again, because I just didn't enjoy it. It just defeated the whole purpose of that. So, that can be easier to say than to do. But what I did see was, it's really all to do. Why do we get nervous? Why do we get anxious? Why do we have that feeling of apprehension? It's a feeling of not being in control of the situation. That something can go wrong. As I said, even something like tripping over a cable, or your amp packing up, or little things like that. So it's that feeling of not being in control. So that's what we have to have. We have to have that feeling of control. And from a musical point of view, that comes from preparation. Now, we can prepare a lot, and then everything will change. But at least you have prepared for what you're doing. Now, with experience, when you've done something, when you've actually performed in public like that a few times, you've done it, and you look back at that, say a really good gig, and if you get nervous, you say, well, I remember that night we did that gig, that was great, I can do it again. Of course you can do it again, you've done it before, so it's nothing. You're not entering a land of mystery, you're not entering into the realms of the unknown. So you know that you can do it. One of the good things to do is, before you do a gig, is to visualize ahead of time. Kind of visualize that gig. You've played that gig. Keep going over in your mind not just what you're going to play, what the notes are going to be, but how do you want to perform that evening? How do you want to do it? What's the kind of, you want to put some energy into what you're doing. You want to give a good vibe on stage with some body language with the other musicians, which communicates with the audience. It's really about communicating. A live performance is about communication. But you also need to, your mind needs to be very focused and relaxed and calm. Now, in a studio, it's different, because in a studio, you're focusing on individual notes. You're under a microscope in a studio. It's a quite different thing. But in a live situation, and this is what I'm really talking about here at the moment, it's all about communicating in the moment. So you have to be in that right frame of mind. So you need a calm and focused mind. Once you've done it a few times, you've done it once, you can do it again. One of the things that I do that I've found very, very helpful, you'll hear that a lot of athletes do this, footballers do it, they become quite ritualized. You know, I've heard of soccer players that when they're getting ready for a match, they tie their left shoelaces before their right shoelaces, put the left shoe or the other way around. They have this focus. Now, a lot of these things are often called superstitions. They're not superstitions. What they're doing is they're ritualizing something so that the mind can focus. That's really what that's all about. And you can make up these little things yourself. I have my own, which are quite simple, of how I like to work. Of course, there are times when situation doesn't allow you to do that. But really, you know, I like to do the sound check. When I do the sound check, I like to recreate my own space. Now, I'm here in my studio. I sit here. I've got everything around me. I'm sitting on this chair. It doesn't matter where I am. If I'm playing in Tokyo, Hong Kong, Los Angeles, New York, Paris, it doesn't matter where I am. I'm actually, in my mind, I'm sitting on this chair here. So I have the chair. I like to have a piano bench. I sit there. I have my monitors, my fold back where they are. I have my mic in front of the guitar. I have a speaking mic on a boom here. I have my preamp. Everything's in the same place. So it doesn't matter where I am in the world. I'm still in my space. So I've created that space. That's my little ritual. When I've done the sound check, as I'm playing, I'm imagining and getting the sound right, adjusting the sound, getting used to the room. In my mind, I actually go through the gig in miniature, in a very short version of it. I'll play maybe a fast tune, a slow tune, so I get the feel of the room. So I go, yep. And when I feel that, I know, yep, I can do this because I'm in control of the sound. Everything's fine. I've created my space. Then when I go into the dressing room, I tend not to play the guitar. It's not until 15 minutes before I go on that I get dressed, ready for the gig. And then 5 minutes before I go on, I pick the guitar up, I play a couple of little things, get it in tune, and then I leave it. And I don't warm up. That's my own particular thing. I don't like to warm up. I like to go on stage cold and just sit there. And I've got that sound in my mind from the sound check. I'm going back into my little space. You know, I can be in a theater somewhere, anywhere in the world, but I'm in this room, in my little space. So I have that. So then I walk out on stage, and then I'm focused. Something that's very important is we must try not to think too much, because once we start thinking, what happens then, and it happens a lot with improvised music, is because a lot of that's to do with making decisions. Once you start thinking to yourself, oh, I could do it this way, I could do it that way. That's one of the reasons I don't warm up before I play, because if I start playing before I go on, then I start thinking of different ways that I can play a tune that I'm going to be playing that evening. And then I'm giving myself all these decisions. It's like little children. Up until a certain age, you can't say to a child, what would you like to eat? Would you like this or would you like that? Or like that? Because you're confusing them. You're giving them too much to think about. So with a little child, you just have to say, right, here's what you're having to eat. And that's it. So we do that. So don't give ourselves any choices through that thinking process, because that's when something will go wrong. Another thing that happens, if I'm working with other musicians and I know one of the musicians is nervous, or maybe they're all nervous, I don't know, that makes me nervous. Nerves are contagious, so we have got to be very careful with that. Another thing that happens, if you're playing and things don't seem to be going right, we blame ourselves. Now, if you're playing solo, you can say, well, you're the only one that's got to blame if if it's not going right. But that could be a number of things. Maybe the sound isn't right. There's all kinds of things in that. But I remember many years ago I was playing somewhere, and Herb Ellis was in the audience, great jazz guitar player, a real hero of mine, and he came along to see me. And I was playing with a bass player and a drummer, piano bass drums, actually, piano bass drums. And I was really struggling to play. I hadn't worked with these musicians before. I was struggling to, it was hard. And I was just like, oh, I'm playing like an idiot tonight. I'm useless, I'm hopeless, this is terrible. Herb Ellis is there, I feel a complete fool. When I went off stage, I'm almost about to go up to him and apologize. And he said, Martin, that drummer he's not the drummer for you. He's too busy. He's too busy. He's putting you off all the time. And then I thought, well, yeah, that's right. I've been blaming myself. I'm blaming the drummer. It's just the way he played. But he was the wrong kind of drummer for me. He wasn't leaving any space for me to do anything. So to compensate for that, I was starting to overplay and playing all the wrong things, and my time went out the window and the phrasing went out the window. So don't always blame yourself. It's not always, there's so many elements that have to come together for this. Try not to think too much. So that's easy to say, isn't it? How do we not think too much? Well, there's a few things you can do. One thing is when you're playing, and if you're overthinking and you're giving yourself all these decisions, you don't know which direction to go, you can do something very simple. Just focus on the tone of the guitar or the feel that you're doing. Don't necessarily focus on the notes. Don't worry about the notes. Just think of the tone and the feel, and enjoy that. The word I'm using a lot here is focus. Now, another thing that I do is if I have that feeling, it's not so much I feel nervous, I can have a slight anxious feeling before I play, and certainly an apprehension sometimes, because you want everything to go well. What I do is I go into the dressing room or anywhere I can go, just a little bit of space on my own, and slowly I walk backwards and forwards. And when I'm walking backwards and forwards, I can be 10 paces, 12 paces, 20 paces, whatever. While I'm doing that, all I'm focusing on are my feet, my legs as I'm walking. It's walking meditation. So that's all I'm doing. So I'm just focusing on that. It sounds really simple, because it is. It's not always easy to do, but you focus on that. Now, if you sat down and meditated, it's too passive. You could fall asleep, or you just have, it's a different energy. But if you're walking, it's not a passive, it's an active thing that's going on. You're walking backwards and forwards, but you're focusing on the act of walking. I said, what's that got to do with guitar playing? Well, what it has to do with guitar playing is you're using exactly the same tool there. You're training your mind to focus on one thing. In this case, it's walking. Don't do it with a guitar. Just walk up and down slowly, but concentrate and focus on just the act of walking. And the more you do this, it will calm you. One of the side effects to this, of getting into that zone of focusing, one of the side effects is it's calming. So when we get nervous, that's what we need, because we're not calm. We're all over the place. So it's very relaxing to do, very calming, and you're breathing with that. You're not over breathing. You're not hyperventilating, and you're training your mind to do that. When you go on the stage, you take that exact approach to playing the guitar. And these are the things that I do, that I've been doing for many, many years, and that I find very helpful. You'll find your own ways, find your own rituals, as it were, but this is, it's really all to do with that of not thinking, but focusing.